Hey guys, and welcome back to another Unfiltered Gamer board game review. And in today's video, we're covering the game Stack City by WHM Games. This is a game for 14 and up, 2 to 4 players, and it takes roughly 60 to 90 minutes to play. And in the game Stack City, you are going to be one of 4 enterprises attempting to build and construct cities, city locations around the town. You're going to be utilizing your main building to start with, whether it be a school or whether it be a church or a restaurant, and you'll be placing that down on top of basic buildings. Basic buildings are the heart and soul of the game. They'll allow you to place them on the game board here, which you then can stack the larger city locations on top of them, which will then give you resources. Every turn you'll manage resources, use those resources to purchase new city locations, place them on the game board, which will gain you more money throughout the game until the very end, in which you'll see whoever has the most points and is the winner. Will you come out on top in the game Stack City? Find out as we cover the basic idea of how to set the game up, how to play, and of course, my review. Setting up Stack City is quite simple. The first thing you do is you take the main game board out and place it within reach of all players. From there, you're going to give each player a player marker. These markers will go around the game board. I chose blue. There are blue, orange, green, and pink that you can choose from. Then give each player their colored markers. You're going to give them their colored building as well as their colored card. For instance, I have the school and orange will have the restaurant. Then each player is going to get a reference card. This reference card will tell you the phases of the game as well as any iconography that you will need throughout the game. Take all the brown buildings and place them within reach of all the players on the right-hand side of the game board, as well as the deck of action cards and the money. There is 1s, 5s, and 10 denominations in the stack. The left-hand side of the game board is the most complex, but I'll describe it fairly simply for you. There are 5 columns. Each column has its own color, and it starts from the lowest building to the highest building, followed by permits. So, for instance, the blue column will be the hospital, capitol, airport, and then blue permits. And then place the buildings of the associated type on the card. Each row from 1, 2, and 3 are going to have the associated action card underneath each of the buildings. So for row 1, all the row 1 cards will have the Stack City action cards of 1, and then 2 for the next row, and 3 for the next row. So basically when you get a building, you get a free action card, and they get better as you get the better buildings. And finally, you're going to have the key to the city on the very bottom right. Instead of having any white permits, the key to the city will be placed there so that you can gain it whenever you have built the most at the end of the game. And that's it. Once you've gone ahead and set up the game like that, you can go ahead and take all the player markers and place them near the action scoring board, and you're ready to go. Stack City is played in turns, and it works like this. I take my turn, you take your turn, and we rinse and repeat until the game ends. The game will end when somebody's player marker reaches the 32 space on the game board here, or when all applicable buildings have been built. On the first turn of the game, everybody's going to get resources, basically rent. And how that works is I'm playing as the school, so I'm going to look at my school card, and I'm going to gain the benefits that follow. For instance, I will gain 2 blue blueprints, and I will gain 1 gray building tile. Once I have gained those from the deck and from this stack here, then I'm going to have the option to play them all down. I will take my building that is gray, I will place it on the grid somewhere, and then I will take my building that is blue and I will place it on top of that. Whenever you place any building in the game, you'll need to make sure that it fits on top of gray buildings. You can never place them directly on the black area. Only gray buildings will fit there. So you're basically building on top of buildings. And the buildings you're building on are the gray ones, which you will gain from income. Once you place buildings at any point in the game, you're going to actually place your player marker onto the grid here. There's basically a grid on the outside, which is never going to have buildings on it. This is where you're basically scoring points to speak. They're not victory points, but they're a way in which you'll gain extra income. I have placed a gray and a blue building. That will score me 1 and 2 on this track here. And everybody else will do the same thing. Orange has now gained their bonus orange deed. They're going to get a gray building, and they're going to get their orange to place on, and they will move 2 as well. And you'll notice that they stack on top of each other. And green actually has 2 buildings, and we'll place this one down as well. And they've placed 3, so they will go 3. So as you can see, each player is a little different. But in my case, I have extra permits. Green has less money but more buildings, and orange is going to have more money but less buildings. And then after this has been done, the game is now ready to begin. And how the game begins is by following the phases. It's now my turn. Everybody's placed all their things down and moved on this track here. I'm going to go into my rent phase. And the rent phase works just like the first turn, but it has a bonus. You're going to check every card that you own based on the buildings that you have on the field, and you are going to gain rent. In my case, it would be 2 blue permits, and it would also be 1 gray building. Additionally, I'll check this grid here, this outside area, and I'll look on the side. If my building or player marker is in one of the colored sections, I will gain a bonus value of money. I'm in the 2 slots, so sadly I cannot collect the $1 million, but if I were, I would get the $1 million from the pool. Then I'm going to go ahead and play my building down and follow the different actions that I can take. So for instance, I can play acquired buildings on the board, which I did. I can also gain new buildings from this board over here, this grid here. In order to gain them, I'll have to pay resources, and it'll tell you on the bottom of the card what resources that you need, and these are going to be in the form of permits. I need 1 pink, 1 orange, 2 blue, and then I also need $3 million in order to build this building, or to take this card, gain the action card, and have this building to place onto the game board. The white circles are always going to be a reference to money, and the gray squares are always going to be a reference to the buildings over here. The black squares are going to be a reference to action cards. So action cards may be a currency throughout the game. And whenever you take a new building and you place it out, you're not only going to move your track up here, just like you would whenever you place a gray building, but you're also going to get that action card. The other thing that you can do is you can buy action cards, and you can buy as many as you want on your turn as long as you can afford them. And the cost is associated with the top of the action card deck. This is a 3 action card. It'll cost you $3 million. The next one might be cheaper. And other than that, you can trade. You can do either a player trade, where you just trade with players for whatever value you think is fair, kind of like the Settlers of Catan, or you can do a permit trade. You can either buy a permit for $4 million, or you can do a 2-to-1. So if I don't need 4 blue, I can trade 2 blue in, and then I can take a pink. And those are all the main actions: placing buildings, buying buildings and placing them. Previously owned action cards, you can play those guys. You can buy action cards and then do the trades, either a player or a permit, or you can buy a permit. When buying, you're always just going to check the bottom of the card. You don't have to buy the top one. You can buy the last one and save up. It's really up to you how you want to place them, but there are a few rules with placing these guys down. As you go throughout the game, you're basically going to be placing down these buildings here as you acquire them, and you need to have enough in an area in order to build larger buildings. This is a 2x2 grid, and you have to have the grays to place on top of that space in order for you to build that building, which Leslie will give you the card and the action card to use for a later round. Every one of these blue, green, orange, and pink cards that you have, school, airport, observatory, Ferris wheel, are going to give you bonus income. So in this case here, this airport is going to give me an extra action card every turn, as well as a permit of my choice every turn, which is pretty powerful. Cards are also going to give you a variety of victory points, which is indicated by the purple diamond in the top right-hand corner of the card. So do pay attention to that, because those will be useful throughout the game. And obviously, the more of these cards that you have, these buildings that you have, the more income you're going to get every single turn. Additionally, placing out these buildings here and moving along this track here is going to facilitate you with getting more money that you can then use to buy more action cards or to buy permits if you place enough of these guys down, whether it be the gray ones or whether it be the larger buildings. It's really going to be up to you. You'll also notice that there are white buildings here. These white buildings, as you can see, do not grant you any bonuses for your income, but they are worth quite a hefty amount of victory points at the end of the game, and all of them are going to require either money or a wild variety of the different permits that you can have. They work the same way in terms of having to place the building down and moving up on this track here, but they don't give you any income, and they do give you a benefit when it comes to money. The key to the city here, this is the player who built the most at the end of the game, is going to win this card, which will score them 2 victory points. And the game will progress like that. I will take my action, or my turn, I will gain rent, I will gain any rewards from that rent, I will then use my stuff that I've gained for actions. I will pass, and the next player will go. And we'll proceed until one of 2 things happens. Either A, my player marker hits the 32 space along the building tracker here, or B, all of the buildings that are here and could be built have been built, in which case the game will end, and you will score points for every building that you have acquired based on the purple marker up here. You will score points for any action cards that grant you a purple victory point marker on it, like this economy point card. You don't turn it in, you just keep it for points at the end of the game. And finally, for all your resources, you can trade them in at 5-to-1. 5 permit cards, 1 victory point. And whoever has the most is the winner. The last thing to talk about is obviously that this game is called Stack City, and you can choose to stack things. If you have let's say that you have 3 building points that you can use at the beginning of the game, beginning of your turn. In that case, it's going to be the gray square, and it'll say 1, 1, 1. That's 3 of them. You could do 3 of these small buildings, or you could do a 2 large one and a 1 small one. So be able to place these guys down on the game board, which then gives you different heights. The max height in this game is 6. Once you get there, you can't go any higher, can't block anybody off from there. And the height differentiation does make a difference as to how people can play their buildings, which I'll explain in my review. But just so that you know that when you stack these guys up, they can go in increments of 1 or 2, and you can buy them in increments of 1 or 2. And so you can choose to do that however you want based on what you have available to you in your taxes. Otherwise, that's the basic idea for the game Stack City. Let's talk about it. Stack City is an income management game. You're going to be starting off with something small like the school, restaurant, or church, and progressing from there, being able to buy hospitals, being able to buy stadiums, Ferris wheels, power plants, giving you more income. Now, obviously, you'll start with smaller ones and build your way up. Maybe I currently have the school now, which gives me those 2 building permit service cards and 1 of the gray buildings, which you're always going to get a gray building for everyone. And then eventually, you can purchase maybe this hospital here. And then the hospital will go down on the board, and now it's going to give you an extra blue permit and an extra $1 million every turn. Money is useful in this game. It'll allow you to purchase permits, and those permits are going to be used to buy more buildings. They're also a way to gain more action cards in the game. And so yeah, you're progressively utilizing all the resources at your advantage in order to benefit yourself. Each player has a unique building that starts the game off, and each of them has their own strengths and weaknesses. Obviously, if your building has more permits on it, you want to start by going the permit route, focusing on trading permits for other permits, trading other players for permits, thusly getting new buildings to kind of widen the variety of resources that you can gain. Not every single building is going to give you permits of a specific color. Sometimes they won't give you any permits at all, and sometimes they'll only give you victory points, and you have to kind of track what is going to be worth what when you buy them and at what point. For me, personally, the white ones are more useful at the end of the game because they don't give you any resources or valuable bonuses, but they do give you heavy amounts of victory points, and they're easy to obtain and eventually place on the game board. Resources and buildings are sparse at the beginning of the game, and you can choose to place on literally anybody's spaces provided that you can. These gray spaces, while placing them down, do give you bonuses to go around this game board here. They're not considered yours once they're on the game board, so thusly if I place a 2 block here and somebody picks up this power plant, they can place that directly on my power plant, and they will get the bonus for the power plant as well as the card and to move up on this economy track here. And so you are working together to build a city while also working at odds with each other, because you're not benefiting specifically from anybody playing buildings. You can only benefit if players are placing these gray building spaces down, and you can kind of capitalize on them to build your own. What's also cool too is if you notice somebody wants a specific type of building and you notice the space they want to build it on. For instance, if Bill wanted to build this stadium and I saw on the board where they were trying to build that at, on my turn, if I acquired a gray building, I can actually place this on top of a space to block the person being able to build the stadium. So now they're off by just 1 height, where before they could have actually built the stadium. So you're going to be able to utilize resources to either help you or encourage you to build more, or discourage other players from building things that are a little too powerful for them on their turn. And obviously, because every turn matters in this game, a round of not playing something can be extremely detrimental. It's the difference between getting the building that you need, somebody else getting it, getting the resources that you need for the next round, somebody else getting it, or nobody getting it, and thusly the board being blocked. You can kind of play however you want in this game when it comes to building your city for Stack City, as well as how you want to either disable or enable your opponents when building as well. Do you want to work together with some players who are far behind while protecting yourselves from the players who are a little bit higher ahead? You can start to do that. Work together to build buildings, not hinder each other, and only hinder that player who's trying to get that much farther ahead. The action deck. The action deck is kind of unique. Basically, each of the cards is going to have a different value, whether it be 3 or 1 or 2, and you can purchase as many as you want as long as you have the money to do so. And each card is going to give you a benefit. Now, typically the cards that cost more will be better, and it's also possible that you can gain these as income from the buildings that you've built, but on the occasion, there's going to be cards that say play immediately. A lot of these ones, not so great. This one says that when you play it immediately, the player with the least buildings moves forward 3 spaces, which could or could not benefit you. Or something that says the player with the most buildings built goes back. Maybe you have to discard a permit. There are some negative aspects to these cards, but there's also positives. For instance, gaining economy points, which are basically free victory points when drawing the card. Or just a straight up permit. How about a wild permit? How about a condemned building? Condemned buildings are cool. These are unique little buildings that there are only 2 of in the deck, and if you gain the card, you can take this and place it on a space, thusly blocking it up from players being able to place buildings there. So it's a way to protect spaces that maybe you want to use later, that your opponents are going to use now, or just to cause a little bit of chaos. This deck has a lot of chaos. It is very randomized. You never know what you're going to get in this deck of cards here, but a lot of times there are valuable cards in here, and I'd say for the most part, it's definitely worth digging into this thing if you are able to. This is a building game. This game is about stacking up your city with the gray building locations, placing your buildings that you need onto those locations, and scoring more value. Value is all that matters in this game. Having the most different building spaces as possible is going to be important. Money generating sooner is good, and there are many strategies that you can focus on early in the game. Do you want to go for the action deck and just draw a bunch of these cards to gain more and more value to hopefully get you ahead? Do you want to start laying the groundwork for playing lots of these gray buildings to move along this economy track to give you more money, which will in turn allow you to gain more permits that you can use to purchase buildings? Or you can focus on specifically getting smaller buildings to start off with and being able to utilize the permits with those buildings to then build more buildings. And so they kind of all compartmentalize, they all work together, and they're all a little separate. And that's a cool, unique way of kind of designing your play choices around this game. The fact that it goes up to 6 is irrelevant. I would be shocked if more than 5 or 6 spaces go up to 6, mostly because most of this area is going to be used to be building, and I think the aggressive principle in this game is lower than a lot of other games. You're really focusing on building yourself more than hindering other players, because you hindering somebody in this game, as opposed to helping yourself on a turn, is just going to hurt you and them, and everybody else will get ahead. And so, typically speaking, it's probably not going to be worth it unless you have a bonus building space, where maybe you only needed 1, and then you got that extra 1, and you could choose to kind of mess somebody up with that one, in which case it'll be of benefit. So there is aggressiveness, but it's not super heavy in this game. It's really about building the city and gaining the best amount of money and resources and permits that you possibly can. The trading aspect is there as well. You will trade. It's limited. Most of the time, the 2-to-1 for permits into here are going to be mostly better, but there are cases, especially in the early game, where trading will be necessary or useful or beneficial to you. It's seldom going to be used at the late game. People are going to be really picky about who's ahead and who's not. Think of it like Catan trades. It kind of functions like that. Overall, it's a fun game. This is a cool stacking game. It reminds me of Expansity from Breaking Games. It's very similar in that style, to where you're building different building stretches and utilizing them. The only difference is now that all the buildings are available to everybody, and it only matters when you place them down on the cards that you have at the end of the game. Scoring is simple, building is simple, actions are simple. There's basically 3 things you're doing that are all the same action, which are trading and buying permits, playing action cards, acquiring action cards, and building buildings. That's pretty much all you're doing. The last thing to mention is that the action cards, while when you get them, you can't instantly play them. You have to wait for a turn. But if you trade them, as long as somebody got to the end of the turn with that action card, it's now usable. And action cards can be worth 5 million for 3. So there are some good reasons to pick these guys up. I like this game. I like the style. I like the quality of the game is very nice. This is a prototype. It will be different than when you see it in published form. But what is here is nice. You can tell that there was a lot of love and attention to detail put into the game. All the buildings look like the buildings you would imagine they would be. The mall, the park here, the stadium, they look good. It feels good to place these pieces. It feels good to stack things on this grid and try and combo your values here to kind of generate a wide variety of resources every turn to make you get on top. The game's a close score, which means that you're going to be closely scoring this game. Each and every time, it's not going to be super far off. There's no one player that's going to feel really bad they didn't push far ahead enough. And so it's always going to be a feel-good game with very little aggressive nature behind it. If you like stacking, if you like income management, if you like puzzly games, then Stack City is going to be one for you to definitely take a look at. Negatives for the game? I don't really have a whole lot of negatives. If you like a game like this, if it's something that you think you're going to be interested in, then you're going to want to pick this one up. I guess the only negatives that can come with this game is that people can take the things that you need, and if you get behind by 1 or 2 turns, that could be it for you. There is a windfall that can happen which can guarantee you that you're not too far off from winning, but you're probably also not guaranteed to win anymore when something goes awry. And that's going to have that windfall happen multiple different times throughout the game. So if you like that aspect, you'll like it. If you don't, you don't. Feel bad moments, always feel bad for the player that it happens to, but sometimes it feels good for other players. So yeah, there's Stack City for you. There's a link down below in the description if you're interested in picking up this game. I solidly enjoyed it, and everybody at my table did as well. Thank you guys for watching another Unfiltered Gamer board game review for the game Stack City by WHM Games. If you're interested in picking up this little city building, like stacking up game, then there's a link down below, like I said. As well as, of course, if you're interested, you can go ahead and like, comment, and subscribe. Hit that subscribe button and the bell notification button so you can see more of our videos. We come out 3 times a week, Monday, Wednesday, and Thursday, Friday. I don't know, sometimes I switch it up, but yeah, 3 times a week usually in a live stream. And then we do a live stream on Thursdays for Whatnot. Thank you guys so much for watching. And as always, I look forward to stacking some cities with you guys next time.